Can you monetize a podcast? No, not really. It doesn't work out too well. It ends up being a drag, and then you've got like all this stuff and equipment all drag. It's just not, it's a met. Yes, you can. Of course you can. We'll go over that and a lot more here coming up next. Now, keep watching because by the end of this video, we're going to go over some things to make sure that you put some things into place early that will set you up for long-term and future success. And then also go over other methods of monetization that hopefully you might even be able to implement much sooner than later. So let's dive in. First of all, once you realize how monetization works, you can kind of work the system for yourself. So how does monetizing a podcast work? Think about it as, say a TV show or maybe even a radio station. TV show would probably be the easiest analogy to cover all of our bases. ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, WB, I mean, whoever it is, they start off by producing shows that they think are going to be hits. Why do they want to hit? Because with a key TV show that everybody's watching, everybody's talking about around the water cooler the next morning at work, everybody's paying attention to, all those eyes come to their station to watch that show. Whether it's a drama or a comedy is irrelevant. The plain and simple fact that they've got millions of eyes watching from 7 to 8 or from 6:30 to 7, whatever the case may be, they've got all those eyes glued to the TV. And at certain times, they're going to stop the show and slip in 3, 4, 5 commercials. Well, those advertisers are now looking at millions of eyes. And of course, the shows that have the higher viewers, the higher rate of viewers, are going to charge a more premium price to get an advertisement on there. One of the rare ones, of course, we hear every year that a Super Bowl ad is now up to, is it $7 million for a 30-second ad now? Well, because of, look at the platform. First of all, you're talking about millions of viewers. Second of all, the advertisers have kind of created their own hype. This is the time to really take out all the stops and bring the great commercials. So people are anticipating really good commercials, which means a lot more people are going to stick around sitting on the sofa to watch the commercials than, say, go refresh a drink or go refill the potato chip bowl or run to the bathroom for a few minutes. People are going to stick around and actually watch the commercials for the sake of the commercials. Now, talk about building hype. What advertiser wouldn't want that? So if you're talking about millions of eyes on a program, let's think about millions of ears on a program. That's why Joe Rogan is able to command the prices that he commands. Howard Stern is still up there. He's not number one anymore. Thank you, Joe Rogan. But Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, and many others still command a pretty hefty price because they have a whole bunch of ears listening. Now, for the average podcaster, how are we going to get those millions of ears? Well, chances are we're not going to get that far because we've niched in such a way that this is to serve our business and our clients and customers. It's not for, say, general public consumption. But our listeners are certainly getting a lot of value that they're learning about your business, your products, your services, whatever it is that they're teaching, whatever it is that you are teaching them about in regards to your products and services and how things work. Now, same thing goes for ears, goes for eyes. So the more people you have, the more you can command when it comes to monetization in an advertising model. Again, when it comes to ads, that's what you're talking about here. All right, so that's the background. That's kind of the premise that you're working from. How many ears commands how high a price that you can ask for in your advertising if people are going to advertise on your podcast. There's podcast advertising that can come through, say, your host. There are many hosts that kind of set themselves up as a network and say, hey, look, we've got 500 podcasts that are being hosted here for a grand total of 1 million listeners across the entire podcast spectrum that we host. Well, 1 million ears, that's not bad. Okay, I want a piece of that, and I'm going to pay the podcast network, and they're going to throw my commercial in somewhere in somebody's podcast because I know that their listeners are pretty much what I'm looking for as far as the customer is concerned. So that's how the business end of it works for podcast ads. It doesn't work just for podcast ads. It also works for your YouTube channel or maybe even your blog or something like that. If you've got more people, more eyes, more listeners, more viewers on to whatever it is that you're doing, you could possibly monetize them. We cover that here on this channel, so be sure to like and subscribe, like this particular episode if it's making sense to you, or subscribe and don't miss a thing that we cover, because we cover it all when it comes to podcasting, blogging, YouTube channel, all the stuff that you need for your business to get up and running efficiently, effectively, and inexpensively. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of it. So if it's all based on audience numbers, how can you possibly monetize a podcast? You don't have the millions of viewers or listeners. How do you do that? Well, there are several things that you can do, because notice all this other stuff, that's out of your hands. It's determined by, say, YouTube, or it's determined by the podcast, your podcast host, whether or not you qualify for the monetization package that they have set up. There are several things you can do before the ads money kicks in. First of all, swag. You got t-shirts, you got coffee mugs, you got hats and belts and belt buckles and all kinds of stuff. The cool thing is there's so many businesses, there's so many companies that do that print work, whether it be t-shirts or hoodies or anything like that. They do the print work as the pieces are ordered. So instead, you don't have to keep an inventory. Instead, what happens is that you've got a listener who really likes your show, and you've got a key phrase or something like that that you like to use on your show. Somebody can go to your website, which you've already got hooked up to a printer. They can order their small, medium, or large, or extra large hoodie and have it printed and delivered to their home, and you'll get a small stipend for having it available on your website. So swag is a really easy connection right off the bat. If you've got some very loyal listeners to your podcast, that's not a bad way to go. You can set up some exclusive content that is available by, say, subscription only. You make a little small donation, maybe make it $5 a month, maybe $10 a month, and let's say you've got, your podcast is, say, a 30-minute episode, but you do an extra 15 or 30 minutes with a guest and do a deep dive that is only available for subscribers. That kind of thing will also generate, not only does it generate money, but it also is recurring revenue every month. That's a nice little nest egg to build up. Some other things that you could do, like I mentioned just a moment ago, there's the behind the scenes stuff. But make sure the behind the scenes stuff has a purpose. Yes, it's an extension of what you were talking about in the episode, but make sure it goes further than that. Make sure it gives them a little something extra, and definitely something different that did not get presented in the podcast. Now, you may have the podcast and a little bit of an extension of the podcast, but give them, I don't know, some sprinkles to go on top of it, or a cherry, or maybe some whipped cream and a cherry. Something different that they're not going to get in a usual podcast to make it a little extra valuable, and they want that access to it at a monthly fee. You could also establish some type of a community, a behind-the-scenes community that only listeners are privy to. They can interact with each other. Maybe you'd even start some kind of a podcast con, whatever, named after your particular podcast. Do a meet and greet, anything like that you could possibly charge admission to. Little stuff like that can go a long way, and especially if you bill it as some kind of a U.S. tour or Southwest tour or the 2024 tour. Maybe you can go out and meet some folks, and that's a really great way to find out who your listeners really are, pick their brains, and get them to give you some input into the show. That makes them invested in the show that much more, as well as giving you great content that you know they want. It came right out of their mouth, so that's exactly what they're going to be listening for. The point of the matter is, this is stuff that you control. If you're just starting out, advertisers aren't going to come to you with only 2 downloads or 2 listeners per month. It's just not going to happen. But what will happen is the stuff that you make happen. There's a lot more out there to monetizing a podcast than just the advertising that can come your way, either from the network or from sponsorships and stuff like that. Sponsorships, for example, like if I were to get, let's say, a lighting company or a camera company or somebody like that, or a microphone company to sponsor me, I would mention them, maybe part of it, maybe use their equipment, something like that. That would be some type of a corporate sponsorship. Those come eventually, but not without quality content and with quite a few either listeners or viewers, just like the advertising money. But the other stuff that I just talked about, that's all stuff that you are in control of. You can make that happen and put it into place for your listeners, from the very beginning. How about that? Here's something that may help you along the way. If you haven't set up your podcast yet, get you a list. I've got a free guide to free audio editing software that'll help you get up and running without spending a fortune. There's a link in the description down below. Click on it and get your copy of the free guide to free audio editing software right now. I'm Nick Natarella with AdWise Creative. Thank you for watching.